WNST had a little bit of downtime and a lot of leftovers from Thanksgiving. Certainly, the one gift that does give this time of the year is the gift of ice hockey. And the Washington Capitals playing a couple nights a week, every week here. And it's been about 2 weeks since we've had Ed Frankovic come in here. A little weirdness on the back end of Green Bay and the holiday, but certainly the Capitals have had their fair share of controversy on and off the ice with Alex Ovechkin. And lo and behold, Alex Ovechkin has a big night in front of a special fan up in Toronto, and wish he would have played that well back in April up there, Ed.
Yes, it would have been nice. And I tell you what, that young man, Alex Louis, he sure got a treat on Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, the big stage, and Ovechkin pulled the old Babe Ruth, I'm going to score a goal for you, and then he scored three, much like Ruth back in the 20s, hit 3 home runs when he promised a sick young man he would produce for him. So it was a great night. The Capitals are playing some great hockey right now, and after a real rough patch, last time we spoke, they're getting ready to head out west, and they really laid an egg in Nashville and then in Colorado. And I chatted with Capitals general manager Brian McClellan at the Calgary game on Monday night. The Capitals had another lackluster effort that night, and Brian's a little frustrated with what's going on. He feels like he has the talent he's put together, given what's happened with expansion and salary cap, and they just needed a spark. And I think Coach Barry Trotz found the spark, and that spark was putting Nicholas Backstrom and Alex Ovechkin back together, and the team reeled off 3 straight wins, and I don't think it's any coincidence, because Alexander Ovechkin is a player that is, as Coach Trotz said, he's difficult to play with. You have to have a center that knows where to put the puck, where to get the puck to him, when to give it to him. He's very instinctive. He doesn't play by the book, and a lot of the greats are very instinctive players. Gretzky was like that. And Backstrom's one of those guys that's instinctive as well. And that match, that duo has been spectacular since they came in the league together. And it was Ovechkin's night on Saturday, and he had big goals against Tampa on Friday and against Ottawa on Wednesday. So the Capitals, a little nice dessert with 3 wins over the Thanksgiving weekend are sitting pretty good right now. They're going to have a few days off, and they'll take on the Kings Thursday. But you have to like where the team is right now. They're playing their best hockey at this point.
Coach Trotz and I exchanged a few texts over the weekend. Texts. There you go. I'll just make sure there's no E in there over the weekend. And, look, they haven't lost in a week and a half, right? And this is the strangest week of the whole year for them because they really do get a little bit of downtime. I mean, I don't want to call it a bye week, but this is the period of time where they get to sort of rest their head. And it's always nice to rest your head when you're playing your best hockey.
Yeah, I think now at this point it's good to have a few days off because they played a lot. They played 25 games already. You look in the standings, and a lot of teams have not played that many games. So they need this break. They're still missing Andre Burakovsky, and I think that's going to be, when they get him back, and he's still probably 3 weeks away. When they get him back, boy, they can get a top 6 that could be really good because Jacob Vrana has been the big other story other than Backstrom and Ovechkin, and TJ Oshie always plays well, but Vrana, since he got scratched in Colorado, has been a completely different player. And he's using his speed to generate chances. He got the message from the coach, and he's worked his way back up into the top 6. He was gifted there earlier. I was on him pretty hard because he was not playing the way he needed to. And this last week and a half, he has completely changed his game. Big factor on the ice right now.
You mentioned the change of lines, Ed, and you're an old line hockey guy. I think Trotz opened himself up to be the village idiot in separating them to begin with. That's why the coaches make the big bucks. But in putting it back together here and putting the band back together, so to speak, it really does change the whole dynamic of the whole team when you start to shift lines, especially when you have superstar and Hall of Fame players shifting out lines. You think, well, is it better to put 2 Hall of Famers on separate lines and, have them, help other parts? Or should I just go with the one line and just go all in on that? And that's going to be the same story in April and in May if this team is going to try to chase the cup. And I know we're a long way away from that. There's a lot of hockey to be played. But this is the sort of working out period. And Trotz has had to change a lot of things around here over the course of 3 years, right?
Yes. The injury to Matt Niskanen certainly was a monkey wrench in the plans, and he missed 13 games, and Matt's still working his way back in. I thought he had his best game Friday night against Tampa, but then Saturday in Toronto, his first back-to-back after missing 13 games. I thought he had a strong first 2 periods, but then struggled in the third period with some mistakes. just trying to get back and getting the timing back. When you hurt your hand, yeah, you can skate and everything and be in good condition, but it's not game condition. It's not tape-to-tape passes at full speed. So, yeah, he's had to shuffle the defense around. He's had to shuffle the forward lines. They were really counting on Burakovsky. I mean, the reason that they let Marcus Johansson and Justin Williams go, well, first, the biggest reason was they didn't have the money to pay those guys. But those were the guys that they said, okay, if we're going to lose somebody, it's going to hurt, but we're going to lose those guys because we got Andre Burakovsky and Jacob Verana that we believe in. We've drafted in the first round. We've developed them. They've got the speed. Burakovsky certainly showed in the playoffs in games 5 and 6 against Pittsburgh that, when he decides he wants to play, he can play against anybody. They were really counting on these guys, and they've struggled. And then Burakovsky starts playing well, and he gets hurt. So, Trotz has really had to do a lot of line changing. Yeah, and a lot of, they have 4 guys. They have 4 legit top 6. Before Verana stepped up, you have Kuznetsov and Backstrom up the middle. So you got your 1 and 2 centers. They're set there. And then you have Ovi and Oshie. So do you put a monster line of Backstrom, Ovechkin, and Oshie together and have one power line, and then you got the other 3 that suffer, or do you split it up? And I think a lot of coaches like to split it up because, I was chatting with Dave Brown, our good buddy Dave Brown from the Flyers last week, and we were talking about the Flyers, and he says, our biggest problem right now is we've got one line. We've got Wayne Simmons, Claude Giroux, and Jacob Voracek, and we have no other lines, and it's easy to stop us. So that's why coaches try to split the lines up because they want to get some balance so that you can't put your one checking line and shut that line down and win the game. But it got to the point where Kuznetsov and Ovechkin really weren't having the chemistry. Kuznetsov he struggles at both ends of the ice and just the switch to get, at the defensive end of the ice, he's great in the offensive zone. He's getting better defensively. But Backstrom's a guy is going to work both ends. He really outplayed Sidney Crosby the last time they met up, and putting Backstrom with Ovechkin allowed Oshie to shift to the Kuznetsov line, and now you got that balance. With Verana stepping up, that line's got some speed. It's got a guy like Oshie who can hawk the puck on the boards, and then Backstrom and Ovechkin just have that natural chemistry. So I think Trotz has got the things where he wants right now. I know he's anxious for Burakovsky to get back, and that'll then change things again. But it's good to get that freshness, get that change, because it's such a long season.
Well, you talk about the back-to-backs last weekend, Ottawa, Tampa, and then the trip up to Toronto. Beat a pretty good team up there. I know the hopes are high up there in Toronto right now, and obviously, they've gotten off to the kind of start up there that franchise hasn't seen, quite frankly, in a long, long time, where they sort of know they're going to make the playoffs this year. They haven't had any of that going on in Toronto in a long time, and you know how rabid it is. But the win on top of the hockey night, on top of the Ovechkin called shot, and the sick kid, and all of that stuff. Behind all of that is this Ovechkin-Putin thing as well that you and I haven't talked much about it as well. This is a fascinating dynamic, right? That Ovechkin is now going to back Putin at a time when, politics is going to be on the tip of everyone's tongue in Washington. This is a mess that I don't know that Ted Leon's has thought about signing up for. And I think anybody that's done any work in the hockey space knows about Russian hockey players and their involvement in the Russian government. This is going to be a fascinating thing the rest of Ovechkin's career, as well as the rest of the Trump presidency, as well as playing hockey in Washington but being loyal to Russia. This isn't going to go away. It's nice to say I am not politic and I am not going to talk about it, but then you start a website supporting Putin. So, this is not the last time we're going to hear about this, and I know he heard about it in Toronto over the weekend.
Yeah, well, there's a guy up there who really doesn't like Alex, in the name of Damian Cox, who wrote a book bashing Ovechkin about 8 or 10 years ago called The Ovechkin Project, and it failed miserably. Let's be honest. You're going to spend your hard-earned money on something you want to read. You're not going to go buy a negative book. So, kind of a dumb marketing move there. But this guy's had an axe to grind with Ovi for several years and basically made the statement because he's tied to Putin, nothing he does is, even if he helps a 13-year-old cancer kid, is good. It's just preposterous, right? It's just ridiculous to judge somebody strictly on their politics.
I don't know that Ovechkin has a choice but to support Putin. I think that's part of the whole, I'm not going to wax too political, but Alex Ovechkin can't not support Putin. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it is in Russia, right? So, as much as we think of it as freedom of speech and freedom of choice here, I don't think he could ever get back on a plane and go back home if he had anything even remotely negative to say about, let's say, Syria or the invasion of the Ukraine. He's not allowed to say that.
Exactly, Dad. I mean, it's a controlled dictatorship. We live in a capitalistic democracy. It's a huge difference, and I think that's why it's not as big of a deal, right? Because what do you expect the guy to say, right? I mean, think about it. His mother was an Olympic basketball player, a gold medalist, right? I mean, she had
politically connected as well. Very politically connected. Yes.
They've had a great life, right? Everything has been good for him because, a lot of it having to do with his mother. And then his ability to play hockey. What would you expect him to say? And in that society, that's all they see, right? That's all the news they get, and that's all he got growing up. He wasn't over here when he was younger, where he might have heard the free press or heard, that type of thing. He grew up with that. He's done well with that. So why would anybody expect him? And he's Russian. Why would anybody expect him to be other than loyal? That's where I'm coming from on this. I mean, it's not a shock to me. I think a lot of people are there. With that, and some of these people just have an axe to grind. They don't like him, right? He's Russian, right? They're the big, Canada and Russia. That's been the big hockey rivalry. As much as we Americans love hockey, it's Canada and Russia.
Hey, we did well back in 1980. I remember it. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. That was our high point. There's no doubt about it. But and who's the star player in Canada? Sidney Crosby. And there's a lot of people in that media that just want to make everything Ovechkin versus Crosby, right? Canadian versus Russian. So,
by the way, speaking of that, the Penguins are struggling, huh?
They're not playing very well right now. They have some of the issues the Capitals have. They have, they have to rely on their stars because they lost a lot of good players in the salary cap. They lost Nick Bonino at center. They lost Matt Cullen at center. I mean, they lost two really good third and fourth line centers, and then they lost Marc-Andre Fleury and net. They have Matt Murray's their starter. They had, the goaltending's been a little shaky. And
I guess my point is that they're going to have to scrap to make the playoffs. So are the Caps, by the way. But that's an unusual proposition heading into the holidays. That these games aren't we'll just coast along here. You go coasting along, you're going to have some big games in March that we haven't seen around here in a long time. Same thing with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they're gonna grind, and they'll be fine though. I think the Caps and Pittsburgh will be fine, but it is not going to be a walk in the park, Kazansky. To quote Top Gun, they're going to have to work. I mean, the Devils are certainly much improved. The Rangers are coming on now. I mean, I think the best four teams in the division are still the Penguins, the Caps, the Blue Jackets. Tortorella's doing a great job, and also the Rangers. I think those four teams. But you got the Devils hanging around, the Islanders hanging around. The Islanders, I think, they're scoring a lot of goals. But, when you watch the NHL, and Tampa's up there right now, Tampa's one of the best teams along with the Blues. But the first 40 games, it's a different game. It's wide open because it's such a long season. Teams aren't really playing that physical grind-type style. The intensity's not there. You're going to see the teams that can play that rush game really do well the first half of the season. And then when the clock hits January 1, everybody starts to get into that, okay, what do we got to do to our game to make the playoffs? And you're going to see teams that with more jam that can play the little more physical style that can really throttle you in the neutral zone start to take over and play those strong systems. And Pittsburgh's certainly very good at that, and the Capitals certainly can do that. And I think that's when you're going to start to see the shift, and you'll see some of these teams start to struggle. But the Devils have certainly been a surprise, and they're playing some good hockey. So I'm not just going to write them off. But that Metro Division is awfully tough right now. You look at those records, I think everybody is over 500 except for maybe the Flyers, and they're maybe a game under at this point.
Kings on Thursday night, and a lot of home cooking for the Caps. Columbus on Saturday, San Jose Sharks on Monday, and the Chicago Blackhawks next Wednesday, and the Rangers next Friday. 5 in a row at home, but 5 days off between now and Thursday when they get back after with the LA Kings. You can find Ed anywhere hockey is sold on the internet, Ed Frankovic on Twitter, as well as at WNST.net. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox. That's all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. That arrives at 7 a.m. each and every morning digitally via email. And, of course, last but never least, if there's any breaking news at all, you'll get that first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am a very available individual out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel, and getting ready for the Detroit Lions to get in here on a short week for the Ravens. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.